Hello everyone. In this episode, I mainly plan to explain the prelude to the controversy. Also, please allow me to start with an apology. I apologize for the significant delay in updates. Even in the Japanese version, which was ahead, there were constant revisions. So I decided to focus on completing the Japanese version before the information became too scattered. This caused the English version updates to stop. Furthermore, regarding some of the revisions that were made in the later episodes of the Japanese version, in accordance with my policy of not changing any content based on language, I will be posting the same content, except for the explanation I'm giving now. I ask for your understanding. I plan to correct everything when I create a final compilation at the end. At first, I had asked her to do the narration, but she was simply too busy, and while she seems to be good at everyday English conversation, she struggles with the more technical, argumentative English required for this topic. Moreover, she originally has little interest in politics or economics, so the vocabulary was quite difficult for her. Since the narration I had asked her to do was initially for world history explanation videos, I will use a text-to-speech tool to handle the narration for this content from here on out. Now, let's get started. About Yasuke. I often see comments from Japanese people saying they had just learned about Yasuke for the first time, but I believe that any Japanese person who has gone through compulsory education has at least some awareness of his existence, even if they don't remember his name. Even someone like me, who wasn't interested in Japanese history, remembers his existence. I vaguely recall reading something in a textbook column, accompanied by an illustration, about a black slave sent by missionaries as a gift to Oda Nobunaga. Yasuke is known as a black man who served Oda Nobunaga in the late 16th century. He is said to have come to Japan as a slave of the Jesuits and then served Nobunaga. This is about as much as Japanese people typically know about Yasuke. 2016-2019. Due to the fabricated biography by Lockley Thomas. 2016-2019, the story was twisted into Yasuke became a samurai, a warrior with superior tactics and judgment on the battlefield. Was worshipped as a god by the Japanese, and, to top it off, there was a trend of black slaves in Japan, specifically in northern Kyushu. However, at this point, it hadn't yet become a Bible for the awakened. It was written in such a way that you could interpret it as Christianity opposed slavery, but the barbaric Japanese made black slavery popular. 2020. With the onset of COVID-19, anti-Asian racism rapidly accelerated in the West. A few months later, the George Floyd incident occurred, leading to a large-scale resurgence of the BLM movement. At that time, racist people who could no longer openly discriminate against black people, and black racists whose discrimination against Asians had been exposed, created a climate that justified the absurd logic that, since Asians, who are often perceived as a model minority, tend to be successful, it's okay to discriminate against them, whether they are white or black. This baseless and extreme argument was reminiscent of a certain figure with a little mustache. And as a result, organizations like BLM and DEI turned a blind eye to this contradiction, leading to unchecked anti-Asian racism that became increasingly blatant. Japan's media, which Japanese people trust absolutely, despite ranking 70th out of 180 countries in the world, Press Freedom Index, did not cover these events accurately. However, in countries beloved by the Japanese, such as the United States, the UK, France, Germany, Canada, and Australia, particularly Western Europe, anti-Asian, and specifically anti-Japanese, discrimination rapidly intensified from this time. Even I began to face obvious discrimination on social media, and I quickly developed a strong dislike for Germany, which I had previously liked. Japanese media, which often praises Japan excessively, claims that Japan is recognized and loved worldwide because of anime, Toyota, and Nintendo. Even if you generously accept that claim, it was only true for people in their 40s and 50s 2 or 3 decades ago. Young people in their 20s and 30s today don't even recognize Japan. Most of them think of Japan as either a part of China or a country like North Korea. Indeed, when you speak with people over 40 or 50, there's a high chance they'll speak relatively positively about Japan. But the generation that spreads information on social media is predominantly under 30. And during that time, 2 types of misinformation stood out to me through my experience. 1. The Japanese eat dogs and cats. 2. Japan has the highest suicide rate in the world. As for the first claim, it's actually China and South Korea, where dogs and cats have traditionally been eaten, and 100 years ago, it was European countries like France and Germany, not Japan, where such practices occurred. As for the second claim about suicide rates, Japan does not have the highest rate in the world. While it does have the highest rate among the G7, checking the facts in detail didn't seem to matter to them. I ended up having arguments with many people from the West because of these topics. Based on my experience, in Western Europe, about 30 out of 100 people would initiate discriminatory remarks against Japan. People who recognize Japan and know that Toyota, Nintendo, or Sony are Japanese companies tend to be a minority of enthusiasts, like anime fans, or those who have a particular affinity for Japan. Ironically, the Russian media, which the American-controlled Japanese media paints as evil, actually shows far less anti-Japanese sentiment or ignorance about Japan among the general public across both Western and Eastern Russia. Those who discriminate against Japan or are unaware of it are in the minority. Around 2021, awareness of Yasuke began to spread from niche circles to the general public. The awakened overseas media and entertainment industries, heavily influenced by Thomas's book, had for years been recklessly promoting false information without properly researching Japanese documents or historical facts. This led to a distortion of Japan's history, even at the level of general knowledge, particularly among entertainment fans abroad. So, why didn't the Japanese at the time protest as much as they do now? Many overseas viewers are probably wondering, why is there an uproar now? In reality, there were some objections to the Yasuke anime. And I personally remember correcting my friend's misunderstandings at the time. In Japan, however, Yasuke's existence was still relatively minor. And it was rare for foreign anime to surpass Japanese anime in popularity within Japan. Moreover, negative information from abroad is rarely actively reported within Japan, and even if it is, the reports often feature significant modifications, seemingly deliberate mistranslations, or out-of-context excerpts. Due to this, Japanese people were long unaware of the Yasuke issue or anti-Japanese discrimination. Please remember that at this point, there was already a significant difference in perception of Yasuke between the general public overseas and in Japan. But it wasn't just the Yasuke story that was being misrepresented. While working on the Japanese version, I discovered that false claims were also spreading in Russian-speaking regions, like all Japanese people discriminate against all foreigners. Or even in Japan, they eat dogs and cats. A few friends of mine even asked if these things were true. I believe it's essential to correct these kinds of falsehoods by presenting accurate evidence. Meanwhile, at Ubisoft, according to a December 20, 2021 article, notable talents were leaving the company, and out of the top 25 credited on Ubisoft's biggest game of 2021, Far Cry 6, at least 5 had already left. Of the top 50 credited in last year's major Ubisoft release, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, 12 had left. The 13th recently returned. For reference, Odyssey was released in October 2018, and Valhalla was released in November 2020. The chart shows the progression of Ubisoft's employee turnover. It's evident that significant talent was leaving the company. Not just lower-level employees but across the board. Despite being a company with a workforce of 20,000, Ubisoft had a 12% attrition rate. In September 2022, it was announced that Dumont was working on what was then codenamed Assassin's Creed Red, but many Ubisoft employees refused to work with him, citing past allegations of abuse and sexual misconduct. Ubisoft responded by saying they were taking the allegations seriously, that Dumont had been disciplined, and that he was allowed to continue working. In short, Ubisoft had undergone significant internal changes. This concludes the prelude. What do you think? After hearing this prelude, has your perspective on this issue changed a bit? It wasn't as if the misinformation about Yasuke or anti-Japanese sentiment suddenly exploded with the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows. The truth is that these issues had been brewing for years. But most Japanese people were simply unaware of them. I think I'll wrap it up here for now. Next, we'll cover what happened after the trailer release. On May 15, 2024.
Thank you for watching. Please be sure to check out the next video too. If you liked my content, please consider subscribing to my channel, giving a thumbs up or supporting me. I know I sound presumptuous, but I'm really just barely getting up. Any support through platforms like donation site would be immensely appreciated. It would really help. Well then, goodbye for now.